3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to the Create, Engage, Succeed show with your host, Mary Nunley, my co-host.
Amadeus Nunley.
And our special guest coming to us from across the pond, Vasilis Gkogkidis. For those of you that were watching earlier or wondering why I'm cracking up, it's because I was broadcasting to the wrong place. Those of you that know me know that this is not unusual. And today has been a day of extreme tech challenges, including a file that I'm working on for a client that got eaten by the software. And so 7 hours worth of work needs to be recreated. So I am in rare form. So I know, yeah, sad. Oh, you should have seen the sad face that I had earlier. But anyway, enough about me. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today. We met on social media, of course, on LinkedIn, and another friend of mine has a gamification magazine called Ludology. And if you're interested in what that is, look up the word and then you'll see what it means. But Vasilis was talking about his book and some work that he's been doing in gamification. I'm like, ooh, you need to be a guest on our show. So I have read about the book. I'm not going to give too much away. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who you are, how you got interested, and then we're going to dive into talking about your book. And we've got a few other questions for you. So take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation, first of all. Amazing.
Our pleasure.
So yeah, my name is Vasilis Gkogkidis. I'm from Greece, and I've been kind of working in gamification since 2015. So how I got into gamification is I moved to the UK to do my postgraduate studies in business management. And there was this guy, Pete Jenkins, and he's teaching gamification at the University of Brighton. And I don't know what gamification is at this point. I'm like, hi, it sounds like there are games involved. I like games. Can I come and play games with you? And he's like, yeah, sure, come along. So we do this elective with Pete, and it was a lot of fun. And I kind of like got into the idea kind of immediately. You know, I saw this video. He showed us this video, the piano stairs, if you've watched that, from Sweden, a classic video, I think, in the community. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. A different way to approach problems and solve problems and like engage with people. So I found it a very fascinating idea and I got into it. And I was lucky enough that Pete had a spot for me for a 3-month internship in his company that then turned into a full-time job. And I worked with Pete for almost 3 years before I got into my PhD in the University of Sussex and then Southampton. And did a bit of research on gamification and Lego Serious Play and co-creation. And also in that time period, I wrote this book that was published called Designing Games and Gamification for Learning, because I was always into learning. So since day one of my professional life, I've been teaching one way or another, you know, corporate clients, students at university, students high school, middle school. I've kind of like done a lot of different types of teaching and learning. And I love learning myself.
Excellent.
So, you know, that's where kind of the book combines two of the things I like a lot, games and learning. And that's kind of the premise. It talks a little bit about some of the ideas I have around how you can go about designing games and gamification.
Yeah, no, I found the book very interesting. And I love that you chose Plants vs. Zombies as one of your examples, because even though that game has been around for a while, it is such a great example of how you can layer your learning and teach people. Like you don't just dive right in and it's easily accessible. You don't have to have a video gaming system. As long as you have a smartphone, you can play the game and you can see all those things that you were teaching. And then I also liked what you talked about prototyping. So I know Amadeus has a question, but before that, the prototyping section in your book, do you encourage, let's say, teachers or corporate trainers that are trying a new idea to prototype it before they launch it to the bigger world, whether it's a game or a lesson?
Definitely. I know we cannot prototype everything, and I know we cannot foresee everything that will happen in our teaching and lessons and learning and projects. But prototyping is a big part of game design,
Mhm.
any game design, any gamification design, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And we should try and prototype as much as we can. It's not, again, it's not always 100% possible to prototype and play test, but we should try and do it as much as we can. I think it saves us time, it improves the designs, and it also can save money if you're a
Mm-hmm.
bigger business, or if you're a business kind of like investing a little bit into it. It will help you with all of these things. And I'm definitely a big fan of prototyping. Very simple, pen and paper. Now online, it's a little more complex. I actually did a project lately, and I used a tool called Miro
Mm-hmm.
or Miro. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's Miro.
Uh-huh.
And basically, it's kind of like a teamwork environment where you can work online with your team. And they have an educational version now. So we use it with our students a lot at the university. And then a research team came to me and said, we want to make a learning game. Where and how are we going to develop it though? Because, you are in Greece, we are in the UK, in other countries. And
Right.
we use this tool, Miro. It's really good for collaboration online. And you can play the game, you can prototype it and play it on this platform, which is really good and very helpful. So yes, I'm a big fan of prototyping and play testing as much as possible.
Well, that's good to hear because a lot of times when we work with our clients, it's they want to go straight from here's my idea, now make it happen. It's like you're missing some steps along the way. And that's why it's really good to hear you talk about prototyping. That was the sense I got from the book. That's the same thing that we believe in, but hearing it from an expert to say that really just makes a difference. So, um, Amadeus, I know you've got a question.
Yeah. So this will kind of go back into when you're introducing yourself. You said you got into there because you heard gamification and just thought, oh, that's games. I'm going to be interested. We really frequently have people that hear gamification. They're like, oh, so that just means you guys like add some points to it, right? What's that? So what are some common misconceptions like that you've run into when you are saying I'm a gamification person?
Yeah, that's kind of the pain a lot of us have to do. Let me take my lecturing phase.
There you go. I love it. I love it.
No, I mean, it's one of the points I'm making in the book as well,
Mm-hmm.
where I stress the importance of rules a little bit more than game mechanics. So we talk a lot about PBL, and we talk a lot about, oh, that's all gamification is. And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the times you see that from gamification professionals as well, not only like the audience or not only people that haven't designed anything, but you
Mm-hmm.
Right.
kind of see that narrow thinking from gamification experts and from examples that you can see online.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that the points, badges, and leaderboards are kind of what people have in mind when they think gamification. And I think competitiveness, games being competitive
Right.
is what people have in mind when we talk about gamification or game-based learning and all of these things. Because especially some of the older generation of games and board games that kind of everyone has played, like Monopoly or chess or all of these things that we all know, they're all competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think non-competitive games are kind of like a younger generation of games that has become popular in the last 10 years maybe, and not everyone has been playing games for the last 10 years. So a common misconception is that it has to be competitive. It has to be like people against people, employees against employees, departments against departments or something. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. And when I was talking about game mechanics is my main point is game mechanics are like tools in a toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
The example of the knife and the myth where someone convicted the knife for killing someone, for example. Then they threw the knife in the sea. I think that's either an ancient Greek or an ancient Roman myth, where the knife got convicted, not the person holding the knife. So in a way, game mechanics are kind of like that. They're just
Uh-huh.
tools. They don't have, points, badges, and leaderboards can be great if you need to have competition,
Mhm.
in a specific context and a specific design. they're absolutely fine, no problem. The problem is when you add them to anything, even though it doesn't really match the solution or the problem. You know, that's the issue. And I'll briefly go back to the game that we just made with this amazing research team from the University of Sussex. And when we were discussing, you know, what is your game about? What do you want to teach people? It was very clear that it was a collaborative game. You know, they wanted to talk about sustainability and changing socio-technical systems. And to do that, you need some sort of collaboration, even if it's light collaboration. So you know, it wouldn't make sense to make a game where people play against each other, for example. So no PBL in this case. But I've used PBL in other cases. You know, it's all about the solution and what the solution needs and the situation and the context for me.
And that's really good to hear, because so many times we'll read articles or see stuff and I'm just like, oh yeah, it's gamified. And we go, oh, what'd you do? Oh, PBL. And you're like, that's okay.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing it more in the online course creation space too, where people are coming out with quote unquote gamification solutions. And when you look at the solutions, again, it's just points, badges, leaderboards. And as we talk with our course creating clients, we try to reinforce, if you want to gamify, it's not about badges for the sake of badges. It's not about points for the sake of points. What are you trying to get your students to accomplish? And then how do you encourage them to do that? So like you said, it doesn't have to be competitive, or it could be competitive against yourself.
Again, I've used competitiveness and it has worked well. You know, I've used with my students Kahoot.
Oh, yes.
It's quite popular everywhere. Yeah. And it worked. Did it work long term? I don't think it worked great long term. They got kind of tired of it after a certain point, but it did work. You know, in certain situations. I'm not saying it doesn't work.
No, and that's not what we're saying. We're just, I think, much like what you were saying, is find the appropriate mechanic or tool to fit the goal that you're trying to do. So I always tell stories about Amadeus. He was a competitive tennis player until he messed up his shoulder and couldn't play anymore. And when he was coming back from his first surgery, a lot of the parents on the tennis tour, the junior circuit, thought we were crazy because he would lose his matches, you know, 6-0, 6-0. And like, we'd be cheering and whatever. And people are like, are you nuts? It's like, no, he finished the set. You know, 2 weeks ago, he could only make it through 3 games because he's coming back from shoulder rehab. So it was competitive, but not in the sense that they were thinking of. Our goals were like, can you get your serve in? You know, can you actually finish a game?
Yeah.
So it's a different thing for the situation. But that leads me to my next question for you is, where do you see gamification going in the next few years?
Well, that is a difficult question, isn't it? So a couple of things. They're not predictions or anything. They are my own kind of wishes, what I wished happened in the community. So one thing that I'd like to happen at some point is some type of research project or some type of database project. Someone basically getting together a lot of resources that are out there. So there are a lot of games, for example, that come out of research projects and they're free to play. And there is a PDF somewhere on a website, and you can play a great game about, I don't know, innovation or recycling or something. But they are all in different websites and different places. And I think it would be great if someone could like get together a lot of these like free resources that exist on the internet and have like a large database and say, do you want to teach someone math? You know, these are the games that are available. Do you want to teach someone history? These are blah, 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 you know, like Wikipedia for like learning games kind of thing.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah, even if it's just basically Wikipedia with links to websites, you know, even if it doesn't have all the resources in the same place and it just has like a hub, you know, that would be enough for me. And there are a lot of times where people ask me, oh, have you seen a game like that? Have you seen a game like this? And I'm like, yeah, I have. Wait 2 hours until I find all of the links I need to send you. And you know, I think having a hub will help us as a community to grow.
Mhm.
because you can learn and you can point people to that and you can give them examples of that, etc. So that's one thing that I would like to happen, some sort of database with a lot of these things that are free and anyone can use, and download and play. The other thing I would like to see, and I think it's connected to COVID a little bit. So what happened with COVID is we moved a lot of activities online, right? So a lot of the
Mhm.
playing happens online. And again, this game that we made with this research team is an example of that. We did play testing, prototyping, designing online. Everything happened online. I mean, it worked fine. I think it's a good game. So I think there is an opportunity here to involve people from countries where they're not involved usually, either in the design process, participation, engagement, or just showcase what they have done. So I was part of a conference last year called Gamification Europe,
Mhm.
and I gave a little talk around one of the frameworks I have in my book, the inverted storytelling pyramid. And anyway, someone in the audience really liked it and they wanted to have a chat with me. And we had like a private conversation on the platform. And they said, yeah, I'm from Indonesia and I would never be able to come to Europe for this. I could never afford it. But now here I am online and it's really great. So I
Yes.
think online kind of gives us an opportunity to hear and talk to people from far away. Far away, far away is relative to where you are, basically.
Right.
Right.
But I think gamification started in English speaking countries like the US, the UK, Australia, and it spread all across the globe. But I still feel that we don't know a lot about what people are doing in Egypt or what people are doing in
Mhm.
Indonesia or what people are doing, in Kenya or,
Mhm.
any other place that is not very connected to like the events, the big events. So online gives us this opportunity, and I'd like to see people from these places, be invited to the big events and showcase what they're doing with gamification. Because I promise you, they're doing some very exciting stuff,
Mhm.
and I've
Oh,
seen
yeah.
some very exciting stuff come from countries that you're like, what? I did a couple of projects in Thailand, and they have amazing projects. Thailand, Malaysia, this area of the world has amazing projects going on. Vietnam, and I think it's really interesting to showcase this more widely. So I'd like for the community and game-based learning and gamification communities to actively try and showcase some of these areas of the world where in the past they were not very present in the conversation. I'd like to see more of what's happening. What's number two of all of these iterations? How are they interpreting, game-based learning in Vietnam?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
What's the one cultural element that might give us more insights into what we can do? Um, these are kind of the two wishes or
Yeah,
three,
no,
we
no, I
could
really
say.
like that. My head's already going, "Ooh, we could do like a summit and we could bring in people from other parts of the country." So we'll table that talk for a conversation after this
Yeah,
episode.
that's one of my book ideas for the next book, actually, like gamification around the world, that sort of thing.
That's very
That'd be
cool.
really
Well,
interesting.
yeah, there's some folks I could
Yeah,
introduce you to as well that you probably already know, but if
please.
you don't, and then one last question to wrap things up because this half hour has just flown by, and I'm going to leave this question to Amadeus because he is also a gamer. So go for it, Am.
You can't say you're into gamification without this. What's your favorite game, board game or otherwise, that kind of really got you into it?
From one difficult question to another.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
um, no, so I don't think I have a favorite game. Like honestly, I don't have a game that I've been playing forever. The one game I'm still playing since my childhood is Othello, which is not a very well-known game, I think.
It's the black and
So
white
yeah,
circles,
it's like
right? Uh-huh.
checkers a little bit. Yeah, I used to play it as a kid with my dad, and we still play sometimes. I cannot say I have a favorite game, but I'll tell you three board games specifically that I really like and I play a lot for the past 2 years, more or less. So the one game is called Seven Wonders.
Hmm.
The other one is called Pandemic,
I
Yep.
think, uh-huh.
and the third one is called Code Names.
Okay, I've played that one miserably, but I've played it.
So so why would I suggest anyone that wants to get into game design to play these three board games? Because they have these three different approaches to gameplay. So Seven Wonders is basically a competitive strategy game with a lot of elements of luck, which I really like in strategy games. I don't like playing chess, for example, even though I used to, because it feels like homework. It
Yeah.
feels like I need to do a lot of
Yeah.
reading before I play, and I don't, like I'm not having fun. If I'm gonna do homework, I have a lot of homework to do. So Seven Wonders is a lot of fun to play with friends and family, and I like that you can play from 3 to 7 players, and it's competitive, right? You play against each other, but it's a lot of fun. Number two is Pandemic, and Pandemic is a cooperative game.
Mhm.
We all play together in a team against the game,
Hmm.
and we have to win in a certain amount of time and win a certain amount of resources, or whatever the rules are. Um, and the third one is Code Names, which is interesting because it is competitive and cooperative,
Uh-huh.
right? So it combines the two elements really well. So you have teams working together playing against other teams. So it gives you an example of how to do both in one, or perhaps how you can have a different game of being cooperative, and playing against other people.
Hmm.
So I really like these three games, and I would suggest to anyone that wants to get into game design to kind of like play them and see how they feel while playing them with friends and family, and like I kind of keep notes after the session, play for a couple of hours and then write in a piece of paper, what kind of feelings did you have while you were playing, how do they differ and what would they be good for in a learning situation. When would I like something like Pandemic? When would I like something like Code Names? What are the differences, and how do I kind of facilitate that? So yeah, these are three games that I play a lot with my friends.
I like that. Now, do you play any like role-playing games or anything, or do you just play board games?
I am a light Dungeons and Dragons player and dungeon master, but light. And when I say light, I mean that we use just a couple of rules to keep the whole
Yeah.
experience together. We don't go too deeply into it, and we mainly just have fun. There's not a lot of like over the top role playing, and any dressing and all that. I mean, the dress up, I would like to do. It would be fun, but I
Uh-huh.
enjoy D&D and I enjoy kind of being the DM because I like making the stories,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and I like it's almost like a learning experience, designing like a learning experience in a way. You're kind of like trying to create this session. You're trying to guess what they need, what they're going to be asking for. So I think it's a good. No, honestly, it's a good experience. I think for a learning designer to
Well, I would
perhaps try
just,
and be a DM.
I'm laughing because I was a DM when D&D first came out. That's how old I am. And then Amadeus and his buddies have been playing for close to 15 years now.
Wow.
I go back and forth between DMing, although one of my friends is the more forever DM. He like for the same reason though, he loves to design stuff. I just like designing for everything. There's so much I can do.
But what I found was really interesting was that when they were all at the community college, so 2-year college, and the members of the D&D club, which I was an advisor for, were all the ones that went on to leadership roles. And people were just like, what?
Mm,
But it's because you learn so much of that cooperative. I think from an
yeah.
academic perspective, there's so much you learn about cooperation and
Mhm,
working together when you play those kinds of games, because if you don't
yeah.
collaborate, you're not going to survive the quest.
It, that's so interesting because I have played with people that for fun they were not collaborating and were just doing random
Mhm.
stuff, and they lost and they both died. I remember two friends of mine. I remember this is a very specific example. Two friends of mine and they died. I'm like, you're dead. That's it. Like, what do you mean? Who done? You died. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because you're not working together. You're just doing random stuff.
Yeah.
You're calling the monsters names and stuff. So
Yeah.
what do you expect?
Yeah, so the monster's going to come and get you. So
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of folks have a misconception of what role-playing games are, but I think once you get into it, you really learn that it's really not about like this weird stuff. I mean, there's always going to be weird people out there, but it's really about teamwork, collaboration, problem solving, that type of thing, which, that's why we do this scavenger hunt every year, because it's the same thing. It's weird and it's problem solving and it's fun. But on that note, any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience, and how can they get in touch with you, or how can they get your book?
Yes. So any last words of wisdom? I would say how I've learned the hard way. And trust me, I've made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of things I designed never worked. I have a specific escape room in mind. I can tell you more about my failures another time. I think starting small and really testing the water before getting in is super important. Starting small, feeling safe, because we all feel that I'm not very sure about this. In my head, it feels fine, but is it fine? And I would definitely suggest trying the water with friends, with family, with colleagues, with a small team before you launch anything. Prototype, play test, and then go little by little. It's the same with all types of software. For example, Facebook doesn't launch a new feature to everyone.
Right.
They test it to 1,000 people, 10,000, 100, a million, a country, and then it gets rolled out across the globe, basically. So start small and do a lot of testing to see what works and to see what you are good at. We are not good at everything. I am not good at everything. I know that. So I never made an escape room because I didn't understand how to make an escape room.
You and Amadeus need to talk, because he's taking a class on how to build escape rooms.
So these are my tips to anyone starting out. Like just test the waters.
That's great.
And don't be discouraged if it doesn't work, because it all has happened to all of us. It's part of the process, basically. People can get in touch on LinkedIn. Vasilis Gkogkidis, I go by my name, or Twitter or Facebook, whatever you like. And they can send me a message, actually. That's easier. Find me on LinkedIn, send me a message if you're interested in the book, and I'll send you a link and we can talk about it a bit more.
Excellent. Well, like I said, I highly recommend the book. I've shared it in a few groups that I'm in, because it's an easy read, but it's got great actionable tips. And that's the thing that I really like. It's not just a academic theory, that's got its place too. But if I'm actually in the trenches and trying to do something, I need some actionable steps. And that's what I really liked about the book. It's like, okay, so here's how you do this, and here's how you do this. And I'm like, yes, I could share that with my clients and they're going to have some success. So Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
I'm so happy, because that was my goal with it. That was the goal. The book came from a training I was running in the past. The structure comes from a training I was running for organizations in the past. So it's supposed to be actionable. It's supposed to give you like practical tips. So perfect.
Yes, if that was your goal, you did it. So thank you so much for being our guest. This has been such a fun conversation, and hopefully we can have you come back in a few months and share what you're learning with your escape games and stuff, or we can go down some of those other stranger paths that we didn't get to touch on today. So this is Mary Nunley and
Amadeus Dunley,
with our special guest,
Vasilis Gkogkidis,
signing off from today's episode of the Create, Engage, Succeed show. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.